Everybody, welcome back to another edition of Rapid Recap here at Inside Nebraska. With me for these, as always, is Greg Smith, our recruiting content extraordinaire, if I can use that label that he usually bestows on Jansen Coburn for their excellent recruiting blitz episodes, which before we get into things, you can check that out on the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. Those come out weekly with Greg and Jansen, running through the latest in Nebraska recruiting. You can also check out Black Shirt Breakdown, where our staff writer Steve Marek and former Husker Black Shirt Jay Foreman break down each Nebraska game on Tuesday of each week. And you can like this video, subscribe to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel to get all of those videos and press conference video and more drop directly into your feed. But Greg, for this edition, Rapid Recap, sort of assessing, looking back at Rhule and his lightning round press conference on Thursday. As usual, he spoke for about 10, 11, 12 minutes, but some injury updates that came out for four impact players.
Yeah, as we definitely, he wants to. It's tough because Nebraska, as we know, is the walking wounded. So trying to figure out what's going on with that. But the big four that we heard about, Marques Buford, who was actually, he's on his way back. Rhule did not say whether or not, like, how many plays he would play this weekend against Michigan State, but he has the chance to be out there and contribute. Deshaun Singleton, he tried to go in practice, and it did not go as well as they hoped, according to Matt Rhule. And so he's still out for an extended amount of time. Billy Kemp, he said, is kind of making miraculous progress, and he's actually going to travel. Billy Kemp is going to travel to the Michigan State game. He says,
"How about that?
Said, that's insane to me. Like I'm shocked." But good for Billy.
He came out of the injury tent when he went down against Northwestern. He had tears in his eyes. The sideline reporter reported that. Her name's escaping me now, but he had tears in his eyes. His parents were there. He was hugging them. So it's like, okay, well, that just seeing that, hearing that, it's like, well, Billy Kemp is probably done for the year. At least that's how it's trending. So for him to have avoided a long-term injury and to miss one game, probably going to miss the Michigan State game, but
yeah, probably. He said that he might. Yeah,
Matt
Rhule said that he might be able to go, but like he at the very least is going to get treatment, right? And that's good that he'll be with the team and doing that. And then the final one to touch on, Nuri Nueli still continues to progress. He's not going to go this week, but he still continues to progress as well.
Yeah, and Singleton. So on defense, you have that dichotomy of two a former starting safety from last year in Buford, and then starting safety who's a breakout defensive player on for the Black Shirts, and Singleton, who are both sort of trending in different directions right now. And with Singleton's not making as much progress as you would hope, and Buford is coming right along like pretty much as planned. Like that's been the plan. Rhule has said from the start. He's said it multiple times since. Like, our plan with Marques is we're going to bring him along slowly and cautiously as possible, and the hope and the plan is to use him in that 4-game window, the last 4 games of the season. And that's lining up right now with what's looks like it's going to happen. I mean, he would probably, like you've seen with Teddy Prohaska earlier this year, where they get him in for a few snaps, and Jaden Doss got him in for 5 snaps in that Illinois game. You could just bring him along slowly, and that worked to pretty much perfection, just as far as like getting them comfortable and ready to play with Teddy. He was getting on those jumbo packages as an extra tight end or extra lineman, lined up as an inline tight end, and boom, now all of a sudden we need you back. We need you as a starter. And he fit in there. Last game, second game in a row starting on Saturday. And then Doss, same thing, like 5 snaps here, increased playing time against Northwestern. And then against Purdue, you see an increase in playing time, and gets his second career catch, a 16-yarder, and it's a crucial catch. So the plan with those guys went really well. I'm curious to see if we see the same with Buford, who he's one of those guys. I wrote about it a couple times last week on Monday, and then after Tony White spoke on Tuesday of what he can bring to this defense after they've seen him in practice sessions more and more, and getting more comfortable, getting more physically ready. So Greg, what do you think that Buford specifically, what sort of value add could he be to this defense if he comes back?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. This is a game that you might not like see him a ton, like based on the way that Michigan State plays, right? Like I think that
Good
this
point.
is
Yeah.
more of a game where you don't want to necessarily throw him out there when he's going to have to be coming downhill and hitting guys a lot. Like it might be better to like maybe get his feet wet a little bit, maybe on special teams, and him run around down there, and just kind of just be in the action. Next week might be even better for him with the style of play that they have. But I could
For that
see him
Maryland
starting to
game.
get, yeah, for that Maryland game. But the thing is, and I was thinking about this as you were talking about it, like it's tough with the Singleton news about him progressing slower than you wanted, but on Buford, to get Buford back and ramped up is really nice for this defense, even though, as we have all kind of noted, this defense is playing great ball right now. They had a great month of October, but to get another starting player back for this kind of stretch run, and especially one that we thought was one of their more dynamic playmakers, right? I think we all kind of like thought that last year when Marques Buford was going and when the lights started to come on for him, that he definitely showed he was one of their more dynamic playmakers. And to add another guy like that into this defense would be really nice. And it kind of makes you excited for what they could be to finish off the season, adding another guy like that. But I think that I think you're dead on with kind of the plan that we saw with Teddy Prohaska and Jaden Doss and others too, about just kind of ramping them up, and then you'll see them get turned loose later.
Yeah, I mean, on one side, it's like, yeah, they're adding an extra piece to a defense that's already been awesome. It's like it would be if you could have it, if you could have it in an ideal world, Marques Buford would be a standout wide receiver
Right,
instead of a standout defensive
right.
back to help that receiving core in those injuries. But I mean, I I love comparisons and metaphors and all that, and to me, like adding a starting caliber player to a defense that's playing this well and already has obviously starting caliber players in the
Mm-hmm.
secondary who have been playing really well this year. Adding another one of those is sort of similar to what like you saw the San Francisco 49ers in the NFL doing. They already had an awesome defensive line, but what did they do? They just didn't sort of settle. They added a key piece in Javon Hargrave in the offseason, then Chase Young during the trade deadline a couple days ago. So it's like, all
Yeah.
right, if we know our strength on that defense, we're just going to make that strong point even stronger. And it's somewhat similar. I think the comparison sort of lines up with Buford of uh, he's not going to hurt you. He's only going to help you, adding him back into the mix. Um, and we'll see the Maryland point, as you were saying that, I'm like, yeah, that's a good point with the passing offense they have coming in.
Yeah, and I think too, it's not this is it's such an interesting situation because it's not like, how do I say this? Like people are asking about him because they want Buford to be back out there because he's a really good player, and people really like him. But it's not as if they are like the play has been bad at his position and therefore you have to get him back right now. You know what I mean? Kind of
Right.
that fine line, which is a great position to be in if you're in Nebraska, because that then allows you to kind of slowly work him back in,
Yep.
because there hasn't been much drop off, if any, on that in that back end, as guys have been kind of shuffled in and out.
Yeah, that's a testament to Phelan Sanford stepping in
Oh
there for
yeah.
Deshaun Singleton. Like, yeah, Phelan's not probably not the same caliber of player. He's not the same caliber of athlete. He's probably not a future NFL player, most likely, unless it's a special teams role. But he's gone in there and
Been very good
he was the
hitting people.
defensive player of the game
Right.
against Illinois. He had that forced fumble. He had the or the touchdown saving tackle on that first drive of the game that set up the goal line stand. That's now been the turning point of the Huskers season. So
Right.
there's not much to complain about there or be upset about, because they've filled those roles really nicely. But next thing to hit on from Matt Rhule on Thursday is he shared sort of his philosophy about, I mean, didn't share, he's talked about it before, but an update on where the team's at with decisions on on whether to use a red shirt or not use a red shirt on some of the freshmen or the younger guys. Because again, you have the 4-game window where you can play up to 4 games before making ultimate decision in the regular season. I believe, like, I think if they were to make the
I
conference
don't.
championship game or bowl game, I think that the guys can play whether that be a 5th or 6th game. I'm pretty sure it's a 4 regular season.
I think so. Like we were trying to get clarity on that last week, and then it kind of slipped back through the cracks. We need to find out because Matt Rhule himself has described it both ways. I feel like at the podium, and so now we're confused by that, and we've had some fan questions about that as well. But there are some decisions. Matt Rhule said there weren't a lot of guys actually that kind of fit into this kind of decision mode of where they have to make the decision. Jaden Doss, I guess, is but isn't because he's going to play because he's had 3 games, hovering right there. Demetrius Bell, another wide receiver at 1 game. He's going to redshirt. And then on the defense, there's a couple of interesting ones. Ethan Nation, who's a guy that, man, I feel like we heard a lot about Ethan Nation during the fall, especially maybe once we saw him out there
After
returning punts and stuff.
Yeah.
And after the scrimmage and all of that. But he's at 2 games, and I think he's going to probably redshirt. DeAndre Barnes, who's kind of flipped back and forth between wide receiver and defensive back. Sua Lafutu on the defensive line. I think he'll preserve his red shirt just given what has kind of happened with that defensive line and how good it's been. But then also walk-on transfer James Williams, Sticks or Sackman, depending on what your flavor.
Steve is very there. Adamant that the nickname is Sticks. So.
Yeah, Steve, very adamant. Hey, his teammates said Sackman. I go with the teammates. He's at 2 games, and so we don't know what they go. Maybe this is a game though where James Williams against Michigan State. Maybe he doesn't play in this one, and then Maryland is a game you turn him loose in. I don't know. We'll see. That'll be interesting as well. But the exciting thing about that in a way is that a lot of those guys are guys that you think have some potential and guys that Matt Rhule or other coaches have mentioned as having potential that might still get to preserve that red shirt and help the team even more in the future. So when we're talking about them really being contenders potentially for a conference championship, those guys have got extra seasoning and have played more. Like that's something that you just have to have in the back of your mind moving forward.
Yeah, and the last one you mentioned, James Williams, that was something that Rhule talked about after the Northwestern game when he got in there for 7 snaps, got the sack, and then obviously the James Williams storyline exploded after that, and then he got in there against Purdue and almost came up with a sack against Hudson Card, forced him to throw the ball away, got his hands on him outside the pocket, and Rhule talked about it twice, at the post game after Northwestern and again. I believe it was last Thursday. Yeah, because he was talking about that sort of is the plan. He said it. He essentially said it that with a guy like James Williams, he's and Kai Wallen, another guy who's at 3 games, or he's at 4 games. He's played 4 on defense, 3 on special teams. Who's a guy who might wind up being a red shirt this year. But yeah, with James Williams, he said that's sort of the plan where you bring him in, see what role they can have, develop them, and yeah, here's the quote. We've got some really good players that are redshirting and developing, and it's going to come to fruition in a pretty cool way. We have James Williams, Kai Wallen, who are 2 edge players, sometimes the scout team, Sua, Vincent, Carroll Jackson. So it sounds like those guys are all sort of in that boat of we'll play them, we'll give them some early playing time, develop them, and most likely redshirt down the road.
But you know what's really neat about that? If you're those players, it's a lot more likely for you to buy into this whole vision of sometimes you're on scout teams, sometimes you're going to play. If the coaching staff it keeps you engaged, but if the coaching staff actually follows through and then puts you in games. So now that it's happened a couple of times with James Williams, obviously he made the plays, but even just getting out there, like that actually shows you, hey, coach is serious. He's actually going to put me out there. Because I promise you there's places all over the country where guys are being strung along that they're going to get off scout team and going to get into games, and then it never happens. And then it's, oh, little Tommy, I'm sorry. It just didn't break the way that it could. Hell, we heard it here over the last few years, right? And so to see that actually happen is really interesting and neat. And like you said, it's another way to keep guys engaged. And I think that just goes to show just like kind of what they're building overall, and the way they kind of analyze things and the handle that they have on the pulse of the team. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, coach would put me in. We've been state champs, no doubt in my mind.
Right. I had this. Don't worry, because you want to win, put Booby in. Let me spin.
put Booby in. And he can pass.
Oh, what a great movie.
Oh, I might have to watch that now right after we get done wrapping up here. But then 2 other guys actually I wrote down that interest me, or just sort of in that range. Mason Goldman, lineman, who's played 1 game this year, but he has underwent surgery, so he's for sure going to be a red shirt. And then Ramir Stewart has played 1 game, and he's got a couple mentions in press conferences think it was a week or two ago, like he just got thrown in there where it's like, oh, not gonna jot that down because anytime someone gets an unprompted mention, it's like, all right, write that down and keep an eye on. And Ramir's a guy who I think could has a really bright future. He's gonna be really interesting
I would agree.
in that secondary coming over from Philadelphia. But last thing before wrapping up here is on Tommi Hill. He gets a mention in like every press conference where Rhule, even if he's not asked about the defense and he's just
always comes up
in general. It's like Christian McCaffrey. It's like a Tommi Hill reference, Christian McCaffrey, and then Bill Walsh or Mike Lombardi, Bill Parcells. Like those guys are going on my Matt Rhule bingo card for a press conference. And I mean, no knock against him. Just that's just an observation that he does bring Tommi Hill up. But I think there is a reason for that. And I think he touched on it today, just about Tommi, like how he's just a football player. Like I think he relates to this staff so well, and this staff relates to him because like he's a program guy who's willing and down to do anything that's asked of him and try to do it well. I mean, you saw him get suspended in the spring, and like that, he was already back on the field. Like he probably missed one or maybe two practices. He was already back out there, and to me, he's just sort of a prime example of what this coaching staff is trying to be all about, with laying the foundation and turning things around in this program.
Yeah, he's a testament to like the fact that we can coach you hard, but then we're still going to throw our arms around you and love on you as well if you come out the other side on this, right? If you stick with us, if you trust the process, all those kind of cliches, but they're actually true in this case. He's really a testament to that. And honestly, going back to a guy we were just talking about, James Williams is kind of a testament to that. Remember, it didn't get as much publicity and it kind of slipped under the radar, but James actually mentioned that he wasn't where he needed to be with the things that Coach Rhule was asking him to do early on when he first got here in the summer, late in the summer. He said, quote, Coach Rhule runs a tight ship. And Rhule actually came and mentioned that at a press conference, and his very next press conference, in case you wonder if Matt Rhule is watching the side sessions of his players that are happening as well, which is kind of neat. He said, all I wanted him to do was be on time and go to class. And so that was really
hilarious.
Interesting.
It's like, well, really when you put on paper, moment. When you put it on paper, that doesn't seem like too much.
Doesn't seem that bad. But Tommi Hill is another example of that, probably even more so, the fact where he actually got suspended. But, you know, Tommy's come a long way. And if you actually also listen to the other players talk about him, they talk about him the same way. They talk about him. Isaac Gifford has mentioned it a couple times where he said, you know, I'm so proud of Tommi and the growth that he's shown. We always knew that he could play and that he was a talented player, but it was just some of the other stuff that he had to get figured out. And so, yeah, I feel like Tommi Hill is on the very short list of guys that, you know, 5-10 years from now, however long, we're going to be talking about still as like an OOU guy. We're going to see him like coming back to Nebraska and getting innovation, and the coaching staff bringing him to practice to talk to people about what it's like to trust the process. Like he's well on his way for that.
Yeah, he is. He seems to be this staff's that guy that the first year coaching staff like needs to like be a sort of a turnaround example of a guy who really turned things around, bought into the new way of doing things, and then can be a testimonial for other guys in the program or for freshmen coming in. And I wanted to mention this because it just popped in my mind in the fall camp, not GBR Rewind that's going off now. A look in the YouTube series. I mean, Tommi got a short spotlight for about 5 minutes or so on one of those episodes, and he was honest about how he came here last year, and he was just sort of I'll use the word alone, but that's not what I mean, but he was just sort of isolated, I guess, I think is the best way that he described it, where he was just keeping to himself and just kind of didn't totally feel like he was fully I don't know if about part of the program, but just wasn't fully there. And now you're seeing that turn around where he relates to the coaching staff. He's building relationships with his teammates, and now that he's fully healthy, he's making an impact on the field as two-way Tommi.
Two-way Tommi.
Two-pick two-way Tommi coming off of the Purdue game where we saw him make that impact. But yeah, like Rhule said, he actually, speaking of redshirts earlier, Tommi Hill was a guy who Rhule said.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, totally forgot to mention that Tommi was a guy who they had a conversation of, well, should I have redshirt this year because he was banged up? And Rhule said, there's a game this year. Don't remember which one. Rhule said he doesn't remember which one. Where we had a conversation like, well, we'll just play this game out and see how we go from there. And boom, now we're here, and now he's become a big time impact player for the Huskers this year and their success. And I love another use of the word lion. Said
Tommi Hill's another lion.
Tommi Hill's just got the intensity of a lion. It's like boom, headline, quote it. But,
there it is.
Yeah. Speaking of, who's someone who has an intensity of a lion? Steve Mark. Steve Mark, our expert football writer at Inside Nebraska. He's going to be traveling out tomorrow for the Nebraska-Michigan State game on Saturday. Again, 11 a.m. Central Time kick on FS1. Steve will be boots on the ground, and I know I say this all the time. Now I want to say it when he's not around. Right. He's a must follow on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
He with the stats and whatever multimedia stuff he puts out there during the game, and he does it quickly, especially when he cuts up clips of the game plays and like has something that he points out. It's just he's a must follow on Twitter. So if you're not doing that, head to Twitter, aka x.com, and follow him at Steve_Marik. That's Steve_MARIK to get those tweets dropped directly into your feed, just like you can get these videos dropped directly into your feed by subscribing to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. Encourage you to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and visit InsideNebraska.com for all our written coverage of this weekend's game against Michigan State, and plenty more stemming from that. Greg and Jansen will have recruiting blitz on Monday morning. We'll have plenty more coverage of Nebraska as they look for win number 4 in a row. Say it with me. Isn't that crazy, Greg?
4 in a row. Go the drive for 4.
To get to 6. Trying for 6 of the last 7. So once again, for Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter, and we'll catch you guys again next time.